This Second Awakening movement was a movement that was brought to life with the idea that God was no longer an angry God and was more forgiving, especially when it came to the high infant mortality rate of the time. The roles of women as mothers became stronger, and with this change, it attached the mainstay of Republican motherhood. As Gail Collins states, women had won the right to schooling during the Revolutionary War when they were given the responsibility of raising the Republican citizens of the future. They were responsible for nurturing future generations, but this was also a delicate transition time for women, especially when coming into their own independent roles outside of the homestead. When once hidden from any social activity outside of the household, women were becoming an active and more boisterous figure within society. It was an evolution out of what has been called the separation of spheres. Thanks to new publications such as Ladies' Magazine, which was the first publication for women by women, and Godey's Magazine. Thanks to women like Lydia Maria Child and Sarah Hale, whom out of need to support her children, became pioneering women that helped set the wave of domestic bliss in the pre-Civil War era. Women were becoming avid readers, and Harper's Magazine estimated that 4/5 of the reading public was female. Because of these new publications that were so easily brought into the home, women began to change their outward appearance as much as their new roles of mothers and women within society. This was one of the many eras in American history when young women were at war with their bodies. With the commonplace of slavery throughout America, it became more ideal for women to wear more constrictive clothing to protect their ability of not having to produce goods through hard labor. The ideal waistline of women of the time was a mere 20 inches, and corsets were compared to Chinese foot binding. Women were becoming more educated and finding ways of living a life without becoming restricted to marriage. Teaching school was a way for women to get out of spinsterhood to help find a new way of earning a life on their own. However, the pay was still very low and nothing compared to the stereotypical alcoholic male school teachers. There was also a huge boom of industrialization throughout the North, which gave way for young, unmarried, childless women to work for a salary. This was also a new approach for women to forge a way for themselves in what went against the European patrilineal hierarchy, unlike the Cherokee women, which had to learn and adjust to the white man's ways of living. With the changes of clothing and vocational opportunities, there were also major changes when it came to women's general and reproductive health. In what was once called hysteria, women were treated with somewhat archaic ways for treating the natural progression within a woman's body, oftentimes believing that they would become idiotic during menstruation. Practices that included bloodletting, leeches, and a new wave of natural remedies such as soaking in spring waters and diet. A trendsetter of her time was Elizabeth Blackwell. She was the first woman to graduate from medical school out of necessity for a new understanding of treating diseases specific to women. Since the ideal role of women was to be the mother, it was vital for women to be a part of the continuation of this new emerging world. However, during this time of transformative knowledge, pregnancy was actually on the decline. Abortions became so commonplace that women could order special tonics that were promised to be rid of unwanted pregnancies through the mail. This wasn't seen the way we see pregnancies today. People of the time believed that the fetus was not a human being until the quickening, when it began to move around in the womb. With midwifery changing hands from women to men, barbaric ways of birthing were beginning to emerge. Doctors at the time were using forceps to speed up the birthing process, which often left women grotesquely scarred for life. Because of this new ailment emerging throughout the breeders of the nation, these doctors began experimenting corrective surgeries on slave women, and also without anesthetics. This was also a time when hygiene wasn't widely practiced, which also led to many unfortunate deaths. One cannot mention any of these periods of change without the acknowledgement of slavery throughout America and the impact it made throughout this nation. There are countless tales of horror stories from former slaves that gave us egregious insight of what daily life was like for slaves. With countless horror stories to recall, it becomes painful to even discuss. Because of her research of primary sources and first-hand accounts, Harriet Beecher Stowe was able to write Uncle Tom's Cabin, giving a massive headway to the abolitionist reform of the day. But by far the most dedicated and most important person of the time was Harriet Tubman. She risked life and limb, a recorded 19 times, to ensure the freedom of her fellow man by using her wits and natural ability to stay calm in crisis. This had a domino effect towards the emancipation of slavery of the time. The anti-slave movement did a lot to liberate its female members as well as the slaves. The Grimke family helped to keep this tradition alive. Needless to say, this was an era of exciting change that helped form the evolution of America, and thankfully women were the powerhouse behind all of these important changes.